right, we're gonna get started. Can you guys hear us? Thumbs up. All right, work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings. First item is this discussion of the formal agenda. So we'll start with this evening's agenda. Does anybody have any questions, comments? I understand we're going to take one of those items and table. Yep.
Chair, fellow members of the board, we would like to pull item 8, which is on the business agenda, which is the ambulance service area plan amendments. There's some additional edits that are being made by staff, and Justin is a little under the weather and unable to join us. So if we will pull that and we will bring it back on November 13th.
All right, when we come to the regular meeting, we'll go ahead and have that motion.
Amend it.
Yeah. Anything else on the agenda this evening, tonight's agenda? Anything, Mr. Webb, Mr. Thompson are joining us virtually, any? Okay, we'll move on to the rolling agenda. So we have the agenda through January 15th. Or the agendas for work sessions and for regular meetings. Do we have any comments or questions?
Business agenda item question. When will we be circling back with the fair board for appointments?
It's November 13th.
November 13th.
November 13th for fair board appointments.
Okay, it's just not on here.
Yeah, it's not on there.
That's
But,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
What date is Commissioner elect Akua sworn in?
It'll be on January 8th, I believe.
Do I get a re-swearing?
Yes.
I do. Very excited.
And we have a recognition for Commissioner Toyota on
Yes.
November 11th. Fantastic.
Oh,
He's
I
already
see it
told me
now.
that he'll be calling in sick.
No fair.
I have to go, I have a thing.
Thing somewhere.
Anything else? Any other comments, questions? Okay. On
Yes.
November 11th. Fantastic.
Oh,
He's
I
already
see it
told
now.
me that he'll be calling in sick.
No
Got
fair.
a little-
Nice lag.
got a little bit of a lag, I think.
Thing
Can
somewhere.
can you all hear me right now?
Anything else? Any other Yes. questions?
Can you hear Commissioner Webb?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
because I'm here, what I'm hearing are
Thank you.
two audio streams, two different audio streams at the same
Yeah.
time.
Got a
So
little bit of a lag, I think. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Webb. We're looking at it.
right now,
Anything else? Any other Yes. questions?
can you hear Commissioner Webb?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm here, what I'm hearing are
Very
two
exciting to hear our voices on replay.
different audio streams.
I always thought I sounded like
Yeah.
a.
Got a little bit of a lag, I think. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Webb. We're looking at it.
Right now.
Anything else? Any other questions?
I have a lot of other comments, Commissioner, Chair.
Yes.
Because I'm here, what I'm hearing are
Very
two
exciting to hear our voices on replay.
different audio streams.
Yeah, it is.
Definitely new.
Got a little bit of a lag, I think. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Webb. We're looking at it.
Right now.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Like that. It's been a loop.
Yeah, that's weird.
I'm here, what I'm hearing are two different audio streams.
Yeah.
You know, I told whomever was listening to me earlier, the stars are not aligned. Stars are out of whack today. It's been a loop.
Yeah, that's weird.
I'm here,
That's an improvement.
Down. Just kidding. You know, I told whoever was listening to me earlier, the stars are not aligned. Stars are out of whack today. It's been a loop.
Yeah, that's weird.
I'm here.
That's an improvement.
Down.
I,
Just kidding. You know, I don't, you were listening to me earlier, the stars are not aligned. The stars are.
Okay, try that. Commissioner Thompson, can you hear us?
I can hear you, but I no longer see Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, I'm gonna text her right now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I guess she was the problem. Okay. We'll be looking for Commissioner Webb to see if she, okay. And I just texted her to let her know that it's, that we're back on here. There she is. Okay, Commissioner Webb, can you hear us now? Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and move on to our agenda items here. The Flatfoot Forestry and Wood Products Economic Development, TFEDC Committee. We have Dan Goody, our District Forester, and Kevin Leahy, Executive Director of Cedar, joining us. And I know we've got a presentation, so we're gonna pull up some slides here.
Do we just say advance on time or?
Yeah, okay, we just have to kind of, manual instruction. Cool. Or
You can be like,
verbal, excuse me.
click it.
We'll take David.
Okay, here we go.
Right.
Dan.
Oh, sure. For the commissioners, thank you for this opportunity to do this annual presentation. I think we missed last year.
We may have.
We may have, so we wanted to catch up. So please, next slide, please.
There you go. Oh, there we go. There, even better. Perfect.
Then I gotta figure out how to do it. There we go. Mission of the Flatfoot Forest Economic Development Committee is pretty simple. Primary goals are to educate community leaders and the public about the status and importance of the forest sector in the regional economy, and to help economic planning efforts and economic development projects in the forest sector to benefit the local communities. It's a pretty simple committee. And while I'm on the committee, Kevin, don't let me forget, we have to ask you all to reappoint everyone back to the committee.
We have some new members to that.
And we'll walk through that. I thought I'd get that out. Community members, I'm chairing right now. They talked me into it for another year. Kevin is the vice chair. Lindsay Davis from Hampton is secretary treasurer, and Courtney is also on our committee. Aaron Groth from OSU Extension is there. John Nygaard from Warrenton. Folks from Newveen, the Hampton plant, new member from Mason, Bruce, and Gerard. Tom Scoggins and Bill Young for rounding out the small woodland. So pretty good representation across the forest sector. We got a long list of Aaron's accomplishment at OSU Extension. I won't read all of this for you, but he's reaching out. One of his strong suits is he's bilingual, so he reaches out to a lot of the Hispanic community with the, translating a lot of that stuff into Spanish, and then trying to message the managing Oregon's west side forest in a fire landscape. So pretty good work there. You can print off a copy if you want more detail, but
Great.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, this, we've had this slide before. We presented it at our tours. The economic impact of Flatfoot County, the forestry wood products industry. See the numbers there, 1,315 forest sector jobs. We know these numbers are underreported because a lot of single proprietors that have their own businesses, etc., 6% of our total employment. Average wage, this is from a few years ago, the 70,599. You'll see the next slide after we get to it. It's a little higher now. And historically, almost 30% of our county economic base tied to the sector, and the breakdown of the forest ownership. And the 2024 and 25 activities, the annual community leaders tour, which we did delay. Dan was all busy in ODF with fighting fires in the eastern part of the state, et cetera. And our classic job fair, which was in March this past year. I'm going to confirm the date with the superintendent. It's been about 2 weeks for this year, but it'll be about the same time up at our Lexington campus here in Astoria. And the Classic Works internship program, Hampton Mill was really the first ones that started the program. They were kind of the prototype. And from there, just the work we all do, and Lindsay Davis serves on our steering committee for Classic Works, and Hampton is an employer and others. So next slide.
Yeah, it's a side note to the annual community leaders tour. We also have the 6th grade forestry day at our office in September. We're trying to get them in opposite seasons, so it doesn't overwork our staff.
Side comment, first comment, I participated in the 6th grade tour back in my day, so a few years ago. Okay, the Oregon County is with the greatest forest sector wage difference. Again, a number that we've used this a lot in our presentations and updates. But here, this is updated, a 71% difference between the average wage in this sector versus the average wage in Clatsop County.
Okay, yeah, well, this is just the projected revenue for Clatsop County from ODF for the next 4 quarters. We didn't split it out to that long, horrible table that shows every little square to every little piece. But pretty steady, 6 million to almost 5 million every quarter through first quarter of fiscal 26. The list below are all the different folks who benefit from that revenue. You guys have seen distribution spreadsheets and we've got the details to it, so I didn't feel we need to pile it all up, but I know, having been a unit forester myself, it's important, and every one of those fire chiefs always asks, okay, are you gonna harvest them in my area? So they plan on it. Oh. Clicker died.
Well, I'll kind of get a preamble. I'm going to cover the some of the private sector employment. Starting with Hampton, the starting wage, it was great. OBI, Oregon Business and Industry, they just did a tour I was part of. I attended here locally. We went to Hampton and 4 other large employers in Clatsop County. Very impressive. Again, I'm not going to read it line by line here, but combined with the contract logging trucking businesses that employ almost 800 people. And of course, we have a housing crisis we're all well aware of at Hampton Mill. Next slide. Very involved with locally sourced lumber. And then again, here is the Hampton updated numbers: 150 FTEs, 16 million in direct wages and benefits, almost 7 million to local transport trucking businesses, 14 million to local logging businesses, $67 million in log purchase payments to private landowners, and 15 active apprenticeships across all that they are involved with. Wanamill, it's great to Don, commissioners, others, Business Oregon, theater, et cetera, working with Wanamill, very key employer here in Clatsop County. It's nice to have them kind of in a positive way. We're communicating very effectively together, and they shared this slide with us in preparation for tonight. 750 plus team members, annual wages of 90 million plus. The procurement, capital investment, the 50 million in safety, et cetera. And obviously with the whole tip that the commissioners approved, et cetera, that was so positive, $150 million project to rebuild paper machine number 1 with 500 construction jobs. It's really great things. Next. Warrenton Fiber, again, John Nygaard on our team, just again, a family-owned business. A signature business here in Clatsop County, Warrenton Fiber, Nygaard Logging. Again, what they have in direct payroll every year, what they pay to local businesses and subcontractors, just a great business. And I'm going to talk about HTP at the end here. Retail. Yeah, just the log chipper and 5,500 loads of mainly treetops, and of course that goes. It's interesting, I know that they're doing some barging, so the expanded barging is very exciting, so yeah. They're very entrepreneurial, but also looking forward to the next step. They don't stand on their laurels. Lewis and Clark Timberlands, largest landowner in Clatsop County, over 140,000 acres. And again, this was from a few years ago, the tax revenue for Clatsop County and how it kind of breaks down to school, fire prevention, and local government. And then the impacts of the Habitat Conservation Plan, we're here to educate and just, what it means in terms of the reduction of the timber revenue to our schools. And I mean, we're all very well aware of the impact it's going to have on us, but we'll continue to work to support workforce development program. I'm part of the leadership at the college, working with Gerald Hogue, who's our new president, very entrepreneurial in his approach. And we want to continue and grow to be the community training partner here. Ongoing tours, workshops, education. Elected officials, that's what we do the tour. Also to have folks from outside the area come on into our tours, not just, kind of the locals, but working on that to have more folks from the metro regions attending our tours to see the importance of this sector to our economy, and will always be. Educational programming and again, education. And we've had discussion about the job loss potential of up to 250 jobs lost, $18 million in payroll, trying to mitigate that. Obviously, I know the employers are trying to mitigate that. We're also working on processes at the college and other training resources through the Northwest Oregon Works and others like look at other opportunities like perhaps working in welding or other areas of training as these jobs are lost. But again, can't stress enough the importance of this sector and our fishing sector to our economy always. So that's the update on that, and I think we are happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I would just like access to the slide deck if it's not already emailed to us. Was it emailed?
Lindsay emailed it to Teresa.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
perfect.
thank you.
Wonderful. Thank
Commissioner
you.
Yeah, this is really good information.
It is.
We need to put it into context about how much this industry means to Clatsop County and how it ripples down, through so many different, community organizations.
One thread that's missing that it's been my pet project for the last couple of years is trying to tie into biofuels.
Yeah.
And there's an ongoing project with OSU, College of Forestry. And I'll have an update from that in about 6 months.
Okay.
That's not directly related to CFEDC, but it's kind of the next
Another
best,
piece, yeah.
next piece.
Yeah.
Related, we've had some preliminary talks with Warrington Fiber as well. So there's some opportunities, around the corner.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that Lindsay Davis presented this information to the commissioners group that was on tour visiting Clatsop County from Wasco and Deschutes County. We had John Nygaard at the table. We had Mr. Olstad at the table. We had LC Vine Maple Fire Chief Rob Davis. We had TJ Hecox from the county, and we had Commissioner Phil Brady from Wasco County listening to this information. And as usual, we had a lot to say about having more complete data that isn't included in the general set of calculations. It's too much to go into now, but I would say that the work that this CFEDC is doing is invaluable, and we can use it not only locally, but we can invite people from the outside to come in and hear it, not just at the tour that happens annually, but otherwise in the form of outreach to elected leaders all over the state. So thanks so much for your good work.
I want to add one thing. I'm on the OSU Extension Advisory Committee for the county. So as Commissioner Banks, we had a meeting a few weeks ago, and just to keep reinforcing to OSU, to Oregon State University, the importance of the connection with our community and including the School of Forestry. And we had recently the Department of Ag up here, faculty was very positive. So we're both always squeaky wheel reminding OSU that they need to pay attention to the field and not just for ballot. So I would just, any way that you can all encourage that as you're looking at budgets and things, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
So how do we, question process wise, confirm, committee members?
Is that part of your regular session or do you do it now?
I think we'll have to do it in our regular session.
Yeah.
So I hope that you'll
And just a
reappoint us.
list and then,
And this will be the same slate that we would be
Yeah.
reappointing.
Correct. There's some new names on here actually, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's right on the slide.
I was really excited to see Mason, the representative from Mason, Bruce, Mason,
MBG.
thank you.
Yeah.
It was a very good add-in right there.
Is there a time that you guys need for the appointments made?
No.
Because we can make an agenda item for
Yeah,
November.
it'd probably be best to
Just
bring it back to
protocol.
another meeting.
Yeah.
and just have it.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
That's why I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Process question.
That
Great.
would
Thank
be
you.
ideal. Yeah. Well, thank you very
Thank
much
you
for this
all.
presentation.
Thank you all for
Thank
your
you.
support.
It's good to see you always, and thanks for all the good work you're doing, and that's,
Keep up the good work.
you can't underestimate or overestimate, or what am I trying to say, the value of the timber industry and forestry in this community, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I know that Commissioner Webb was trying to rejoin there several times. I guess that she was having some real issues with trying to get back in the meeting. Next is the clear and objective standards for housing projects, update number 3. On page 4, and Gail Henriksen, our community development director.
Thank you. Good
Welcome,
evening.
Gail.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here today just to give you a quarterly update on the clear and objective standards that the state is requiring us to implement by July 1st of next year. And so I just wanted to bring a couple of items to your attention. Oh, look at that. Okay, so under House Bill 3197 that was adopted last year, we have just a few more months to complete this project. And the goal is related specifically to housing and to make sure that when we are processing applications, that the standards we have set are clear and objective. And so things like to the maximum extent possible, or as much as you can, are no longer going to cut it. You're going to have to quantify what we want. So we started this process back in December and have been working through the law doc article by article. And in September, we completed our first draft with the Planning Commission. And we will be bringing draft number 2 forward in December. But every once in a while, we have some policy issues that come up that we want to bring to your board's attention and get some direction. And so the ones that came up in the last quarter are related to a project we've been working on with DLCD about auditing our code and including ways to encourage the use of mass timber for residential uses. And so just this past month, DLCD sent us their report, and it was very heartening and interesting because it included a lot of the things that we've already put in our law doc amendments.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about that later this evening. But there are a couple of items that we haven't included in law doc that we could include in our what we're calling chaos, clear and objective standards, in our chaos project that I would like some direction from. So one of the recommendations that came from DLCD as part of this code audit was that cottage clusters should be included, which we have put in our law doc amendments, but they also recommended an expansion of the zone where cottage clusters could be permitted to include the coastal beach residential zone, which is in the Classic Plains area. Right now, it's all single family. We did not propose any changes to it as part of the law doc amendments because it is considered rural residential land. But there was a recommendation from DLCD to do that. And then also to add accessory dwelling units to one of our multifamily zones, which we did do as part of law doc. So I guess my first question is, would you like staff to look at different zones where we could include cottage clusters?
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at a rural residential zone in our county, I feel like we should look at all of our rural residential zones. Right?
Well, some of them have goal exceptions that allow
Right.
smaller lot sizes. Some of them are still subject to the 2 acre minimum.
Okay,
So we have to, and you can only do one dwelling per 2 acres, so
okay.
we would have to be careful of that requirement, but
How's the,
I haven't, sorry. There's been a flurry of other things.
of course, I mean, FEMA.
FEMA, yeah.
FEMA.
FEMA.
In that, like, we look at, is there a way to amend, you know, because,
Yeah,
you know, the acreage requirements too. Because there's a lot of areas in rural Clatsop County where we have 1 acre lots that could totally suitable for an ADU that is not allowed at this point. So we don't have 2 acres, so. The more we look at, you know, what is really required and, you know, the capacity that, you know, our infrastructure can handle it, then we should look at how much we can actually put into the viable land we have now. So that'll increase housing exponentially.
The 2 acre for the ADU, that's out of state statute, that was
Mhm.
part of the legislation they passed in 2021. So we would need to go back to the legislature and see if
Yeah.
that request could be made and voted on and approved. So,
Right, and you know, like, that's an avenue I think we should explore, because if you look at it and read some of the document, it seems really written for the urban setting and not for the rural setting. So if you look at our application, I think it should be viewed differently.
And how does that promote housing?
We get,
That we have it restricted to 2
What's
acres. I'm just rhetorically, I mean,
Yeah.
if we're trying to promote housing in
they were
the
trying to
state,
promote, yeah,
Yeah.
some of the law, some of the regulations and
Beach town.
statutes were restricted.
yes.
and just strike while the iron's hot while we're pushing for housing. Yeah,
so, and probably a good conversation for your board to have with our lobbyists to talk
Yeah.
about that process in the county future.
Yep.
Okay. So, the next question I have, and the next recommendation that came out of the, I'm sorry, Commissioner Thompson had her hand raised.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. Well, I mean, you've heard that my neighbors are concerned about the increase in density. Nevertheless, I think that insofar as we're able, without lowering standards, without lowering property values, we should work to expand the availability of housing pretty much everywhere, and also work to reassure neighbors that the detrimental impacts they fear are unlikely to occur. And if they do happen to occur and we can mitigate them, I hope we're looking at any kinds of mitigation we can do to any negative impacts on existing neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. Okay, so the next recommendation that came out of the code audit was related specifically to what our code calls right now mobile home parks, but are really manufactured dwelling parks, under the new lingo. But they recommended that we bring those down to a permitted use from a conditional use, and then develop clear and objective standards. And I think, if I recall correctly, we did propose this at, in our law doc amendments that you'll see this evening. So I don't really need your input on that, but I did want to bring it to your attention. And then this is the one I do need some input on, and this is relating back to cottage clusters. We propose cottage clusters as a type 2 conditional use because it would be significantly more dense residential. But the DLCD audit is recommending we do it as a type 1, which would be no public notice, no public hearing, over-the-counter permit. We would need to develop the clear and objective standard. So I'm seeing a thumbs up there, so, and a nod and some thoughts about that. That would be different. We would then incorporate that into this. It won't be part of the law doc amendments that you'll see right away.
Commissioner Thompson, then Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. Well, again, just IBID, the same sets of concerns. If neighbors have concerns about this increased density, to the extent we're able to address those concerns and mitigate them and reassure neighbors, I would like to see more housing whenever and however possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, I recently heard about a conversation that went on at the Housing Authority. Where we had an owner of a mobile home park or whatever we're calling them today, manufactured housing. That was turned down by by the NOHA board. And I think that's very unfortunate because I think that manufactured housing is a very important middle in land development. So I would love for us to make it easier for manufactured housing. And so I think I mean I guess I'm definitely with the state folks on that issue. The problem when you get into rural areas, of course, is water and sewer. And the extent to which that, increases in density can be accommodated through water and sewer, and other infrastructure. So, that's always the reason that we have tried to, to make it more difficult, to have higher densities in rural areas. So we have to kind of get ready for that in terms of pushback from our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb.
And on that, I would assume like if we went to a, type 1 and made simplify the process, like site design review would capture and look at, and so the capacity, we have water, we have storm drain, we'd have all that. So those considerations should be alleviated through some kind of site design review that would happen anyway on a cluster development, correct?
Yes. So every development right now has to have a sign off from water, septic or sewer and the fire department to verify that they have enough capacity, even if it's a single family home. So that is automatically built into our system.
Right.
And then design standards would be something we would need to develop as part of the cottage cluster addition.
How does that affect, like, so you're warranted, how does it affect your EDU? Still 1-for-1 or cottage cluster treated differently?
Yeah, cottage cluster would be treated differently. So it would be its own development type. And there are some parameters in law doc that come out of the model ordinance the state has for cottage cluster development regarding unit size. They do, I believe, have a cap on their requirements for common courtyards, that there's common open space, requirements for parking and things like that, parking design.
Okay.
All right, so I think I have some direction on that. Thank you. And then finally, just to visualize our progress, the green checks go back to December. We're now in November. And you can see that we're at the very top today. We're on page 2 of our calendar. December will be the second draft review with the Planning Commission. A third draft will go to them in January, and then our public hearings will begin in February and March, the Planning Commission and your board. Then we shall send it to the LCD, hope that they acknowledge it and be in compliance well before July 1st.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Yes, great job.
Thank you. And does anyone have any additional questions or anything about the process, what we talked about this evening?
Any questions?
I mean, I think I have a question just in regards to how this is going to combine is the wrong word, but how the FEMA buyout is going to impact the zone that you're speaking of that has the most likelihood of having potential cottage cluster availability.
So any zone where we allow anything that's in a special flood hazard area is going to be impacted by the buyout because there are going to be mitigation requirements. And the mitigation requirements are going to look at capacity and having to dig new swales and retention ponds for create extra storage. Every time you pave something, you're going to have to unpave something somewhere else, basically.
Oof, stuff.
And the mitigation requirements vary depending on if you're just in the 100-year floodplain, or if you're in the riparian buffer zone, or if you're in the floodway. And then where you do your mitigation also increases how much mitigation you have to have. So site selection, I guess, will be very important in how much that will add to a project in terms of cost and time and design requirements and professionals that you're gonna have to hire to complete the project.
I guess I'm just a little sad that we're doing all of this work now to try to increase access to housing development, but then at the end of the year, this other entity is gonna impact us in such a negative fashion, which will end up like negating the work. I mean, you have job security right now. I mean, this situation is tough.
And not to get ahead of ourselves too, but there's other avenues, we'll get professional on this one, but there's things like UGB swap, which we could look at, from the county, and definitely the cities can look at that. What do we trade off some of the land that is going to be
Constrained.
now undeveloped for increase, change our boundaries to include that, omit that, and are we on a possibility that I think it's 10 years is a relatively short window. And when you're looking at this kind of growth we need, but it is a window that we can take advantage of to help mitigate effects of that FEMA buyout. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they've got a lot of moving parts, and it's gonna take every single one of them to kind of figure this out to where we can actually continue to build that.
Yeah.
And we have to also keep in mind, because actually, Commissioner Banks, I thought about that very same thing this afternoon, but we have to keep in mind that there are many other lands that are currently zoned that we can focus on. There's a lot out in Napa, Swenson, that is available, and so trying to make the most that we can with what we have, and promoting, maybe doing more promotion to help people understand they can put an ADU on their property if they meet the criteria, and the other actions that we can take.
Any other questions, comments? No, thank you very much,
Okay,
Gail.
you're
Appreciate
welcome.
all your hard
Thank
work
you.
on this, and we're on track, so that's
Yes.
fantastic. Okay, we don't have any other items on our work session, so we will go ahead and take a break until 6 o'clock. So see you back here in about 20 some minutes.
Wow.
To the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Clerk of the board, can we have a roll call, please?
Derek Wheeler,
Here.
Commissioner Toyota. Here. Commissioner Webb.
I know Commissioner Webb was having some issues trying to connect.
I see her nodding. That's Commissioner Thompson.
So Commissioner,
Thompson.
yeah.
I'm Commissioner Thompson. I'm nodding. You're right. Thank you.
Commissioner Banks.
Here.
All right. First item is the agenda approval. We discussed the agenda during the work session. I know we had one change we wanted to make.
I move to amend our agenda and remove item 8 for a future date.
Second.
Moved and second to approve the agenda with that amendment. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. There's Commissioner Webb.
Well, Commissioner, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, okay, now I can hear you, but I can't see you. So
Okay.
I'm just gonna jiggle along and see how I did it. All right, woohoo!
All right. Good.
But I do have
Welcome.
to tell you that I have just learned that there actually is a time difference between Bend, Oregon and Astoria, Oregon. It's two,
Well, there's certain, I
It's
do
2
think there
minutes.
was a delay when we were trying to talk earlier, yeah.
but no, it turns out that it's 2 minutes. So I'm back.
Good. Well, I'm glad we got it fixed.
And welcome, Commissioner Webb. So we'll move on to the proclamation, Veterans Day proclamation, and Sam Jeans, our Veteran Service Officer Assistant at Clatsop Community Action. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Commissioners, for having me. As mentioned, my name is Sam Jeans. I work with the Veteran Service Officer. His name is Carl Wiley, with Clatsop Community Action. And we are here today proclaiming Monday, November the 11th, 2024 as Veterans Day. And here is a brief informational summary. November 11th, 2024 will be the 105th annual official Veterans Day in the United States of America. This observance is critical in recognizing veterans and their families as part of the fabric of the local community and provides an opportunity for Clatsop County residents to honor their neighbors who served and wore the uniform. Clatsop County, in partnership with Clatsop Community Action, as well as numerous community partners, have joined others across the nation in the initiative Operation Green Light for Veterans, letting the local veteran community know that they are seen, appreciated, and supported by illuminating their building's green from November 4th through the 11th. Residents, businesses, and other organizations are encouraged to participate by simply changing one or more light bulbs inside or outside their home or business to a green bulb. Community members may stop by one of the locations below for a free green light bulb. A limited quantity is available. You can come by the VSO office at Clatsop Community College Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., or the county manager's office Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. To learn more about Operation Greenlight or the ways in which the county is committed to serving local veterans and their families, please visit Clatsop County's Veteran Services Program webpage. There is no fiscal impact.
No fiscal impact. No, and we'll definitely get those green lights to you. So thank you very much, Sam.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, do we have a motion?
Have a comment before a motion?
Yes, absolutely.
Sam here, I've had the pleasure of working with Sam. There's a veterans breakfast once a month, that the VSO and Sam are both there, and they're helping veterans, find benefits, utilize their benefits. Proclamation for November 11th, it comes one day after the great birthday of the United States Marine Corps. And to that point, just want to say, while Sam is here, that, we lost a great Marine, Lou Neubecker, local resident. He and his wife Beverly have been a staple in Clatsop County, hosting veteran events, supporting veterans. I can't call it any more than a calling, and anything to a vet, anything for a vet. Lou was there, Beverly was there. So prayers to Beverly and eternal thanks to Lou, and Semper Fi always.
Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. I will just add to that, just on a personal note, I thank everyone for being here. Not just the commissioners, but everyone in the county who puts their best foot forward every day to make sure that not only veterans are taken care of, but our community, neighbors, and our friends. So thank you all.
Thank you, Sam. Very well said. Appreciate that. Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka, for your service. Appreciate your words as well. It's so important for these veterans to have that support network and that system to assist. All right, are we ready for a motion, Commissioner Toyoka?
I don't have it in front of me.
Oh.
I move to approve the resolution and order proclaiming November 11th, 2024 as Veterans Day, and authorize the chair to read and then sign the proclamation.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the resolution and order proclaiming November 11th, 2024 as Veterans Day. Authorize the chair to read, then sign the proclamation. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. In the matter of proclaiming November 11th, 2024 to be Veterans Day. Whereas in November 1919, President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed November 11th as the first commemoration of Armistice Day, the precursor to Veterans Day. And whereas Clatsop County is home to around 4,500 veterans, more than 1,500 active duty personnel, and countless family members of veterans from all branches of the armed forces, the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and Space Force.
And whereas veterans and their families shall be recognized for their contributions to our community and the sacrifices that were made through their service to our nation and others around the world. And whereas President George Washington said, the willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be directly proportional to how they perceive the veterans of earlier wars were treated and appreciated by their nation. And whereas Clatsop County, in partnership with Clatsop Community Action, is committed to serving these valuable members of our community through the county's Veteran Services Program. And whereas Clatsop County and numerous community partners will join others across the nation in the initiative Operation Greenlight for Veterans, letting our local veteran community know they are seen, appreciated, and supported by illuminating our buildings green from November 4th through the 11th, 2024. Now, thereby, be it hereby resolved that the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim November 11th, 2024 as Veterans Day in Clatsop County and encourages all community members to join in this observance and celebration of the sacrifices made by all who wore the uniform of our armed forces and share our gratitude for the local veteran community by displaying a green light outside their place of business or residence from November 4th through November 11th, 2024. Dated this 23rd day of October, 2024, Clatsop County Board of Commissioners. Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. We'll move on to the next proclamation, which is Tsunami Awareness Day. And Jen Munson, Emergency Management Community Engagement Coordinator. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for considering the secondary proclamation this evening. In 2012, debris from Japan's tsunami washed ashore near Newport, Agate Beach to be precise, reminding us that it is not a matter of if, but when tsunami will strike Oregon's coast. Tsunami Awareness Day emphasizes the need for preparedness among Oregonians, especially given increasing urbanization and, of course, tourism. More folks means more risk. But we can prepare now, and I've brought a few tools for that today. The first thing we can do is know our zone. Learn tsunami evacuation routes and make sure your family knows how to reach higher ground quickly. The county website has these awesome neighborhood-specific maps. I've brought a couple of them today: Jeffers Garden, Hammond, Central Astoria, Warrenton, of course, Cannon and Seaside as well. We have these on our website, but also in the public health building. Of course, just let us know, and we can also connect you with the neighborhood map of your choice. It's important to consider where you're spending the majority of your time, where your family spends the majority of their time. It may not be just at your home. So we can help with these maps. Once you learn where you're located and you have the maps on hand, you'll want to practice. Practicing is so important, including developing plans for those in your family with disabilities. You'll also want to stay informed. We have Clatsop Alerts. You can go ahead and subscribe to that, and that can also inform you about weather updates. And it's important to be able to recognize signs of tsunamis, such as a sudden drop in sea level, as well as strong earthquakes. You can create an emergency plan and create an emergency kit so that you can respond on time. So as we honor those affected by past tsunamis, let's commit to safety and preparedness, and together we can build a more resilient Clatsop County. Thank you so much for considering the proclamation this evening.
Thank you very much, Jen. And are we ready for a motion?
Commissioner Thompson would like to make that motion, please.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. And before I do, I would like to just add that the fact that we have county staff who are willing and able to remind us of what we need to do and how we need to do it. I just am so grateful for the county management and my colleagues for going forward with that. Holy cow, we've got a long agenda. I'm racing back through it. Tell me what page the proclamation's on.
Proclamation is on page 41.
Thank you. So I'm going to go back up to page 41 and make that. In the meantime, I'd invite anybody who's interested in learning to look at the back of my car to see what kinds of equipment you can carry with you. So, Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the resolution and order proclaiming November 5 to be Tsunami Awareness Day and authorize the chair to read, then sign the proclamation.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution in order proclaiming November 5th to be Tsunami Awareness Day and authorize the chair to read, then sign the proclamation. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. In the matter of proclaiming November 5th, 2024 to be Tsunami Awareness Day, whereas in December 2015, the United Nations General Assembly designated November 5th as World Tsunami Awareness Day, calling on all countries, international bodies, and civil society to raise tsunami awareness and share innovative approaches to risk reduction. And whereas in the past 100 years, 58 tsunamis have claimed more than 260,000 lives, or an average of 4,600 per disaster, surpassing any other natural hazard. And whereas the Pacific coast is at risk both from a local tsunami arriving within minutes of an earthquake and distant tsunamis taking several hours to reach shore, and whereas since 1854, 21 tsunamis have impacted the Oregon coast. The last two damaging tsunamis were in 1964 as a result of the Great Alaskan Earthquake, and in 2011 as a result of the Great Tahuka, Japan earthquake that caused severe damage and contributed to deaths of 4 people on the Oregon coast. And whereas there is a potential tsunami death toll to increase in the future because of the combined effects of population increase in coastal areas, growing tourism in tsunami-prone regions, and sea level rise. And whereas early warning and early action are effective tools to protect people, saving lives, and preventing the hazard from becoming a disaster. And now, therefore, be it hereby resolved that the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim November 5th, 2024 as Tsunami Awareness Day in Clatsop County, and we invite all community members to join in this observance by encouraging all citizens and businesses to develop their own emergency preparedness plan and work together toward creating a more prepared society. Dated this 23rd day of October, 2024, Clatsop County Board of Commissioners. Thank you very much, Jen.
Thank you so much.
All right, next is business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 2-minute presentation about any item on the agenda, except for public hearings, or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, they're not.
All right, if you've signed up to testify in person, I know that I've got Andy still, but you wanted to testify on item 11, correct? Okay, then I'll call you up on item 11. Do we have anybody else that's here to speak in person? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public comment at this time and move on to the consent calendar. We've had an opportunity to kind of review the consent calendar. Do we have any questions, comments?
I move to approve.
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as presented. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Move on to commissioner reports and Commissioner Thompson.
Oh my goodness, mine is way too long to go into because I've just spent the last 3 days hosting commissioners from Deschutes and Wasco counties. And the reason that matters relates to resilience, because Wasco County is home to the Redmond Airport, which is going to be the main airport bringing in personnel and supplies and accepting refugees in the event of catastrophic events on the coast here. The backup airport is in Wasco County, that's in Madras, the Madras Airport. I'll present you some kind of written report, not this week, because we've just spent the last 3 days going all over Clatsop County, listening to environmentalists and fishing and forestry and historical and cultural, going to ribbon cuttings at Commissioner Aquila's Columbia Memorial Hospital, but also the Seaside Estuary Park ribbon cutting. They've seen Esperanza Village. They've gone out to Elsie Vine Maple, and they've seen Evergreen Acres watershed and that whole neighborhood. They've seen Elsie Vine Maple Fire. They've seen Jewel School. So we'll have a lot to talk about. I'll hold the rest of it for later, but I want to thank staff for the excellent support and all of the community members who gave so much time and thought and attention to present Clatsop County in a way that communicates who we are and what we're about, what our strengths are, what our needs are, and how we can be good partners with our other county commissioners all over the state. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Thompson. I'm sure that the commissioners enjoyed seeing our county and appreciated you being their tour guide and host for those 3 days. And I was glad to see you at the groundbreaking for the hospital expansion. Thanks for being there, and I'm sure that that was a fun 3 days that you spent. Commissioner Webb.
Yes, as I guess has been very clear at this meeting, I am far away, not really, I'm in Bend, at the annual workforce partnership, which is the collaboration of all of our workforce boards in Oregon, of which there are 9, and most of them are multi-county. I'll give you an update on sort of the learnings from this conference. It's been fabulous, as it always is. And I wish I could tell you about a wonderful grant that we have just received, but I can't. They swore me to silence because we can't announce it, but it's good news. And so it's always wonderful to get together. Unfortunately, there are not always a lot of county commissioners here, but there are a lot of staff, and they bring people in from all over the country. So there's always a lot to learn about what's going on in workforce development across the country. And I'll tell you more about it when I get back home. So I think that's all I've got for tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Webb, and we appreciate you being there and anxious to hear more about your meetings, and then we anticipate hearing more about the grant too. So thanks again, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Toyoka?
Good evening, everyone. Just speak briefly about housing. We just had yet another housing task force meeting, and the consensus is, that we have mandates out of Salem to produce more housing, but then we're always constantly being thrown these hurdles in our path, from HCP to FEMA buy-up. There's other challenges that, kind of distract from getting us to our goal. But we do have a little ray of light. We've wanted to come together and say, there's opportunities that we can do, between upzoning, land use change, designations. But the most important thing is timelines. How do we consolidate the process and make it more time efficient for everyone? If we can consolidate applications, we can do a rezone, a site design, and a plan review all in one fell swoop. That would help consolidate time, and in the builder's eyes, time is money. So we're looking at different avenues to increase that. DLCD was present, so we talked a little bit about the UGB swaps and how, there's Brett Estes right there. We can possibly use that as a benefit to the county and to the cities to find, we're always challenged right now with land. How do we get more land available and expand our growth boundary? Well, we can swap lands that are within that don't really fit buildings, they're not suitable for building. Maybe we can find another parcel that is suitable, swap that land over. So there are avenues there that we can explore and get us, get some more land inventory that'll make it buildable, and it'll provide the opportunity to build more homes. So that was very encouraging today, and we hope with Brett and other folks at DLCD, we'll keep exploring that when we keep moving forward. That's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Commissioner Took. Appreciate all your work on that for a long time. For many years, you've been working on this. So thank you so much for all your efforts.
Oh, that's great.
Commissioner Banks?
Yeah, so, good evening. I've had a busy couple weeks, and I'll have a busy November probably. But, just to start off, I had the benefit of speaking to a couple Tillamook County FFA students recently. They were asking questions about the Habitat Conservation Plan and impacts to their school and impacts to other schools in their district. They're wanting to write research papers and do public speaking events using this topic, which I'm really proud of them. They're very well-spoken kids, so that was a good conversation, and I was able to lead them to some very good resources in order to finish their speeches. That was followed with me volunteering to do another thing, joining the FFA alumni for Astoria High School. My kiddo decided to join, and I was like, well, if she's going to be there, I might as well be there too. So that was a good adventure, which was followed by an Oregon Women in Timber meeting. We are planning the next natural resources dinner, and as you guys have both know and partaken of, is a way that we have been able to fundraise a little over $20,000 per school district for their natural resources programming. Fisheries in Warrenton, FFA, and construction in Astoria, and just a variety of different avenues that funding has been used for. Anything we can do to elevate the kids. And so when I get that date, I will send you guys all an invite, because it's just very important, I think, for us to show up for the kids. That was followed by, I'm looking at my calendar. Probably good that I have one. The Clatsop County Extension Advisory Council met. I was introduced to some new staff, and they discussed their programming. It was nice to see Kevin Leahy and Ed Johnson. They are often in a variety of different forums that I visit in with natural resources and with 4-H Extension. And so that was a good experience to see them. Granted, I was via virtual, but we've got some wonderful new employees at the Extension office, but also we have some amazing employees that are still there. So it was a good update. That was followed by, I need to go back to my month view so that I don't look at my days. Oh, goodness. Oh, I think that kind of does it for this last week. Just have had multiple conversations regarding our ambulance service, regarding community college, economic development, and so on and so forth. So I think everybody's really uber focused on trying to figure out a way to uplift our economy after the major impacts that we have started to receive. And I was kind of a little sad while Dan and Kevin were here not to ask for a slide of what last year looked like for us and the number of jobs within the forest industry. I think that we should take a look at that, just to see how much work we need to do on the swing side. Beyond that, next month I have one meeting with our small table group and the governor's office early November to discuss legislative actions and legislative plans for the upcoming session, what our limit is and what we can request. And then after that, I have a special FTLAC meeting that was called to discuss modeling that the Department of Forestry did for us. And surprisingly, the Department of Forestry followed through with most of our requests on modeling, which is a new occurrence for us, is for them to hear the county's requests and model the scenarios that we did request. So we'll see what those turn out like. Fingers crossed for good news. And then, finally, we'll have the AOC meeting down in Eugene. So I've got my hotel room for one night, because that's all I can give. But anyhow, that is it for now.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Banks, as always, appreciate the updates, and, yeah, I can't wait to put the Natural Resources Dinner on the calendar, because that was a lot of fun last year, and well attended.
Yes.
The fairgrounds was full, so,
Yes.
yeah, thanks for all you're doing. I wanted to thank Olivia Palmer, who did a great story on the Youngs Bay Gangway ribbon cutting. That was a project that the county was very involved in from start to finish, and I want to thank the county manager. Terry Hendricks with Public Works was managing the project. We had Greg Morrell from Bergeson Construction out there, who installed the gangway. And of course, Steve Meschke, who's our natural resources manager, gave a tour. And I think it would be great for everybody to get that tour, to know exactly what we're doing with the net pens out there and how much of an economic impact it makes for this fishery. And Jim Wells with Salmon for All and the gill netters had a really good speech that day to talk about what it means to the fishermen. And, you know, this was, you know, something that we've grown over, you know, the last 50 years or so. And it's become, you know, it's worth millions of dollars to Clatsop County. So I'm so glad that they have this beautiful access to get out to those net pens again and get out to the gill net boats. Really makes a big difference, and it's a huge upgrade for what they used to have. So thank you, Terry, for you and the Public Works crew's work on that. We had the coal pack meeting last, or I guess the week before last as well, after our last county commission meeting. We talked a lot about the FEMA BIOP at that meeting. We had the coalition meeting yesterday for the Floodplain Protection Coalition. There's going to be a town hall in Warrenton next Monday to talk more about it. To be honest, there's just a lot of evolving information with regards to what this FEMA BIOP will ultimately look like. We've heard conflicting information from one week to the next. A lot of counties and communities are still trying to figure out which one of these pick'ems or these implementation compliance measures they're going to select before December 1st. So it's just a very confusing process. We're going to hope for some more clarity in the next couple of months. We will have a litigation effort as well. So Clatsop County, as you remember, pledged $25,000 to the litigation effort, and we'll be meeting in a small group to talk about that strategy as well. But, you know, really it isn't just about the habitat piece, it's the no net loss about floodplain, and for areas that, like Warrenton, where they're considered to be floodplain like the entire city, where are you going to find, you know, the mitigation property to offset any fill or development in this area? You won't. I mean, it's going to basically put the brakes on anything planned in these areas. And then we got to stop thinking of it as floodplain. This is an area that's been levied for 100 years. It's developed. It's a city limit. It's been operating as a city for 100 years. It has all the infrastructure and development that a city would have. So to treat it as though, you know, it's flooded every day by the Columbia River is just not so, and we have to kind of see what the best strategy to push back on that is. So that's evolving, and I think we'll be talking about it a lot more in the next few weeks. And, and then I think Commissioner Thompson mentioned the groundbreaking for the hospital expansion project. That was exciting to be able to actually turn shovels on a almost $300 million project for Clatsop County. It's the largest project that I've heard of for this area, and it's really going to be a consequential project for healthcare in the region. It's the first tsunami vertical evacuation and refuge structure in the nation that's integrated with a hospital. It'll be the second one in Oregon. The Oregon State University Marine Science Building in Newport has a tsunami vertical evacuation and refuge structure as well. But this is unique. We're talking about tsunamis. It's tsunami aware to stay. So this is something that I hope will be a model for other communities to follow. And that's all I have. County Manager.
Chair, members of the board, just want to mention the Coast Guard is planning a Veterans Day event on November 8th at the Armory, beginning at 9 o'clock in the morning. The Navy Band will be there. There'll be Coast Guard speakers, and there'll be a helicopter landing over at the Maritime Museum. I went last year with my wife, and I think there was about 200 participants last year, and it was a great event. And so they're hoping to double the number of attendees this year. So I just want to let everybody know that it's well worth it if you have time on November 8th to go over to the Armory and participate. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, County Manager. Well, we'll move on to our business agenda, and actually, we have moved item 8, which is the ambulance service area plan amendments, to a future meeting. So we'll move to the public hearing. We have 3 public hearings this evening. First is ordinance 24-14, Law Duck Housing Amendments, page 57. So this is the time set for a public hearing on ordinance 24-14, Law Duck Housing Amendments. County Council, may we have the first reading by title only?
This is ordinance number 24-14 in the matter of an ordinance amending Articles 1, 3, and 4 of the Clatsop County Land and Water Development and Use Code to address standards for residential development.
Thank you, County Council. And Gail Hendrickson, our Community Development Director. Can we have the staff report?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Chair and board members. Just again, for the record, I'm Gail Hendrickson, Community Development Director. The amendments that are before you this evening have been in the works for about a year. I think it was about a year ago that we initially held this discussion at a work session to identify ways and amendments to our zoning code that could be used as ways to facilitate housing construction at all price points. It doesn't mean necessarily that housing will occur, but we are just opening up opportunities and giving people more options through these amendments. During our time working on this project, we held a public meeting back in January of this year. We have had several work sessions with your board. We posted the first draft of the proposed amendments back on June 1st of this year. We also mailed and emailed notices to all the special districts as required by OAR. And we took all the public comments, and we published a second draft on August 26th of 2024. The Planning Commission reviewed this on October 8th, and they did recommend unanimously that your board adopt the ordinance as presented. So briefly to summarize the proposed amendments, and there is a more detailed summary in your agenda package this evening. The amendments are really focused on our 5 rural communities, which is where more dense development is allowed. And those communities include Arch Cape, Napa, Swenson, Westport, Miles Crossing, and Jeffers Gardens. So we have focused on adding different types of housing products that could be permitted, things like triplexes, quadplexes, cottage cluster developments. We have included provisions for employee housing in commercial districts. We have looked at reducing lot sizes where there is community water and sewer available, and then along with that, you have to create new standards, new setbacks, new parking requirements. So we tried to address all of those in these amendments. We also, just so you are aware, we heard a lot of public input about short-term rentals and not having certain types of housing used as short-term rentals. And I know in your board's discussion there was not necessarily a consensus, but there was discussion and some pros and cons that your board discussed. The amendment package that's before you this evening does include prohibitions on using employee housing, residential dwellings that are being used for a caretaker or a manager of a business, and cottage clusters, which are the small units that are often looked at as possible entry-level housing. We did recommend that those not be allowed to be used as short-term rentals. And the reason behind that is these 3 types of housing products are really geared towards our local workforce and supporting them. And so it just seemed that it would make the most sense to prohibit their use as STRs. Just briefly, we've touched on this before, but I want to be able to distinguish between rural communities and rural residential lands. And I know that we've had this discussion many times, but our rural communities are areas, the 5 areas that we talked about, Napa, Swenson, Arch Cape, Westport, Miles Crossing, Jeffers Gardens. They are covered by a different set of Oregon administrative roles, and they have different activities that can occur in them. One of them being that your board has the ability to allow density at any level in an unincorporated community. Now, saying that, obviously, we will be limited by the infrastructure available to serve development in those rural communities, but you do have that option of doing that. Rural residential land, on the other hand, are lands that are not designated for denser development. They are our RA1 zones, our RA2 zones. They are larger lots beginning anywhere from 2 acres on up. And so there are a different set of Oregon administrative rules that govern what can be done with those types of properties. And so I wanted to make sure that we had that distinction. Our amendments are focused on the rural communities with only some very minimal changes proposed for the rural residential land. All of the public comments that we have received have been included in your agenda package, and those comments start on page 237 of the agenda. We also included the mailed notices that were sent to all the special districts, and the only special district that we did receive comments back from was the Falcon Cove Domestic Water District, and that comment can be found on page 253 of your agenda. As required by state law, we did submit our post-acknowledgement plan amendment notice, our PAPA notice, to DLCD 35 days prior to the first public hearing. We did work with Brett Estes, our North Coast representative, who reviewed the amendments and worked with other staff at DLCD, and just at this point did not have any comments on the proposed amendments. And then we talked earlier this evening during your work session that coincidentally and independent of our law doc amendments, we had participated in a different project with DLCD related to encouraging mass timber in residential construction. And their report came out with many of the same recommendations that are included in your law doc amendments this evening. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gail. Do we have any questions for staff? Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. Well, thank you for your hard work on this, and I would say your perseverance. Is it, I don't want to put you on the spot. Does it seem to you as though our setting caps on short-term rentals has addressed many of the concerns that were raised in the public comment? Is that a fair question?
Well, I'm sure that it's a fair question. I don't know that I can answer it. I think that the actions your board is taking, both if these amendments are approved with the caps on employee housing and related housing, and the additional step that you'll be taking next month when we look at the short-term rental cap and all the discussions you have about that, I think go a long way to addressing many of the concerns. I'm sure that as with any ordinance that's adopted, there will always be concerns out there that people may not feel have been addressed, but I think that your board has made considerable strides in trying to address those concerns.
Thank you for that considered response.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Webb.
Gail, as somebody who has spent a whole lot of the last 50 years writing zoning code, I can tell you that I think this is really good work. Really, really good work. And I appreciate the way you have responded to comments from our citizens and from the board. And so thank you very much. I really commend your staff for doing such a great job on this. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Webb. Do we have any other questions of staff before we move into the public hearing? Okay, at this time, I will open the public hearing on ordinance 24-14. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest to report? Not seeing any. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
All right, are there any members of the public signed up to speak in person?
No.
Nope. All right, we'll go ahead then and close the public hearing on 24-14. Do we have any discussion, or are we ready for a motion?
I move to conduct the first public hearing of ordinance 2414 and continue the item to November 13th, 2024, regular meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded that we continue the public hearing on this matter to our November 13th, 2024 meeting and conduct the second reading at that time. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Gail.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
And you're still here because we got
Yeah, I'm with you all
Ordinance.
evening.
Right away.
ordinance 24-16, 24-17, and 24-18. Goal 16, exception and map and text amendments related to in-water disposal of dredged materials in the Columbia River estuary, page 303. So this is the time set for a public hearing on ordinances 24-16, 24-17, and 24-18. Goal 16, exception and map and text amendments related to in-water disposal of dredged materials, Columbia River estuary. County Council, can we have the first reading by title only?
So yeah, I'll do all three at once here. That's ordinance number 24-16 in the matter of an ordinance adopting an exception to statewide planning goal 16, Escarine. Yeah, I'm gonna have Gail say that one. I was practicing with her earlier and I still couldn't get it
Give me
right.
the secret bat signal.
Yeah, so I'm
okay.
just gonna point at you next time I have to say that. Escarine, my goodness. Resources related to the flow lane, thalweg, disposal of dredged materials in the Columbia River estuary, and amending the text of Goal 16 of the Clatsop County Comprehensive Plan. Also ordinance number 2417 in the matter of an ordinance amending Goal 16.
Estarine.
Thank you. Resources by adopting the Columbia River estuary thalweg map. And ordinance number 2418 in the matter of an ordinance adopting amendments to Article 1, introductory provisions, Article 4, zoning regulations, Article 5, special districts in Article 6, environmental and resource protection of the land and water development and use code to address dredging materials disposal in the flow land and expanding flow lane thalweg.
Thank you very much, County Council. All right, Gail Hendrickson, our Community Development Director, can we have the staff report?
Absolutely, and I will apologize in advance. This is a rather complex set of applications, so my staff report will be a little bit longer than my usual brevity, which the sheriff, I know, always appreciates. But, so tonight, as County Council has just read, we have three ordinances for your consideration for the first hearing. Ordinance 2416 is related to changes or an exception to Goal 16, which covers activities that can occur in the Columbia River estuary. It also is seeking to allow dredged material disposal in areas of the river that are greater than 65 feet in depth, which would include upstream of the bridge, the Megler Bridge, and downstream. Currently, disposal in areas greater than 65 feet in depth downstream of the bridge is not permitted. And then the exception would also be used to allow any entity that has to dispose of dredged material to be able to utilize this exception as well. So it is not tailored to a particular entity. It would be open to anybody needing to dispose of dredge, subject to federal rules. Ordinance 2417 is the map amendment. That is the 5-year informational thalweg map that we'll discuss a little bit later in the staff report. And then finally, Ordinance 2418 are the text amendments that are needed to support the goal exception. If a goal exception is approved, we're required to document that in the comprehensive plan. And then there are also definitions and standards that we would need to change throughout the zoning code to support the goal exception. Briefly, just to give a little bit of background, the Army Corps is tasked by Congress to maintain the Columbia River Federal Navigation Channel. And that, obviously, for anyone who isn't aware, is right here practically out of our window. As part of that maintenance obviously includes dredging and the disposal of the dredged material. And so the volume of this material is about 1 million cubic yards per year that we're talking about. And we are talking about a navigation channel that supports approximately $23 billion worth of commerce each year. I didn't note how many jobs, but it is several hundred jobs also that are supported by those activities. So when we talk about the federal navigation channel and the flow lane, what we're talking about is an area in the river that is designated as the federal navigation channel, and then the flow lane is 600 feet on either side of the navigation channel. And we last updated this in 2005 when we updated our dredge material management plan and included the definition of flow lane that we currently have now. So back in 2023, the Army Corps came forward to DEQ to get a 401 water quality certification to support their 10-year operation and maintenance plan. And as part of that review, they have to come to the county and they go to the state for review, consistency review, which we'll talk about in just a moment. And as part of that, it came to the attention of everyone that since about 2010, the Army Corps had changed where they were disposing of dredge material in the estuary. And they had gone from this narrow definition of flow lane, the navigation channel and the 600 feet on either side, and they had expanded to a thalweg-based approach. And that approach was meant to navigate what is a very, not to navigate necessarily, no pun intended, but to manage what is a very dynamic situation in the river. And so in order to decrease shoaling and in order to reduce the amount of dredging that was required every year, they went to a system that included not only the flow lane, but anywhere within a 20-foot or deeper contour within that area that's adjacent to the flow lane. And so the Corps had been operating under that system since 2010, unbeknownst to anyone. And because the Corps is working in a dynamic situation and our county comp plan is very static, 40 years static in some cases, it came to be that we could not sign off on the Army Corps' land use compatibility statement because they did not comply with our very static comprehensive plan. And because of that, DEQ cannot issue the 401 water certification, which led to a series of conversations that have been going on for almost a year and a half that have brought us here to this point with these applications. So just briefly, so you will see on your screen, there's an area in the river. It's kind of a greenish color. It's marked AD. That stands for aquatic development. And that is the designated
we're not seeing the slide you're referring to. We're still back with questions for staff on housing.
All right, one moment, please, Commissioner Thompson. Are you able to see the slides now?
Yes, ma'am. Perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so the slide that you're looking at, this is the county zoning map, and the greenish area in the river, that sort of ribbon that runs through the channel or the river, that's labeled AD, that's the flow lane. So the navigation lane, 600 feet on either side, and it is zoned aquatic development. This is the proposed Thalweg estuary informational map, and you can see that it expands slightly out to those 20-foot contours, expands that flow lane area. And so that is the area, if the goal exception is approved by your board, that would be covered by the goal exception. And so the goal exception would then allow anyone to dispose of dredge material in the estuary in areas that are currently designated aquatic conservation. and zoned aquatic conservation 2. And on the map that's on your screen right now, you can see the flow lane. It's the darkish gray ribbon running through the river. And then the lighter blue areas on either side of that are the areas that are designated conservation. And so those areas that are conservation and that overlap with the thalweg would be the areas subject to the goal exception. And so I'm going to pause there briefly to see if your board has any questions about the background or the maps that were just shown.
Any questions? Commissioner Webb. You're on mute.
I'm sorry. This was the first I have seen of all of these maps and of your report. And I guess my question is, I'm a little confused that we're holding a public hearing on these when I don't think, and excuse me, I know I have been absent from a lot of meetings lately, but has the board seen this presentation before? And am I just the lone guy who doesn't?
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Thompson. So the board has not seen...
It's Commissioner Webb.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Webb. My apologies. So the board has not seen this particular presentation tonight. I believe on October 2nd, there was a work session where staff did do just an overview of the goal exception process, not the particulars of the cases that are being reviewed this evening, but of the goal exception process. And then we have also done an overview, one in July and one in September, I believe, with the Planning Commission as well.
I should be, I'm going to reveal my lack of information on water related issues. I recently, one of the things I have enjoyed most in being a commissioner is being handed off to some of our river folks. And I have just learned, and this might help in pronunciation here, that estuary, I finally had to ask Denise Loffman, what is an estuary? What is the definition of an estuary? And I'm going to admit that I did not know that. And what I was told was that an estuary is where the salty ocean meets freshwater river. And I'm very embarrassed. I'm probably the only person on this call who didn't know what that definition was. But I think it's awfully important when we're talking about what estuaries are. And as I say, I haven't seen, this is the first I have seen of these maps, and I'm not really prepared, I think, to vote on an ordinance for a public hearing without knowing more and having a lot of questions answered.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Thompson.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Webb. I was out with Denise Loffman yesterday at the MERDS campus on South Tongue Point with a presentation by her staff on this issue, which leads me to be better prepared than I had been. Nevertheless, the fact that staff has done this investigation, I think, leads me to trust that they would not guide us in an incorrect direction. But I think it would also be useful to have more presentations on this by CREST because it is such a significant issue. I'm satisfied because I spent hours yesterday hearing a presentation directly from Denise and her staff on this issue, standing on the land. But I understand more now than I did before. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Okay,
and,
can we get back to
sorry, I may have been unclear. This wasn't my entire presentation. There's
Right,
more.
we have more.
So, anyway, I just wanted to pause to see if there was any questions about the backgrounds or the maps, but we will get into more detail, Commissioner Webb, about estuaries and estuary planning, so. Okay, so, to go back and continue our planning discussion, the statewide planning goals, there are 19 of them. 18 of them apply to Clatsop County. The last 4 goals, 16, which are estuarine resources, and the one we're focused on this evening, Goal 17, coastal shorelands, Goal 18, beaches and dunes, and Goal 19, ocean resources make up the coastal goals. And all of those goals are applicable to Clatsop County. The estuarine goals obviously cover the estuaries, and we do have 3 of them in the county that I will talk about. But because we are a coastal county and we are subject to goals 16, 17, 18, and 19, we are also therefore included in the coastal management program, coastal management zone program. This was approved in 1977, and it is authorized under the Coastal Zone Management Act of 1972. And as a result of that, and you can see the map that's on the right-hand side where it's labeled Coastal Management Zone, this is the area that Clatsop County that are subject to the Management Zone Program requirements, which include a requirement that when federal agencies are doing work within the Coastal Management Zone, they are required to show that they are consistent with state rules and the statewide planning goals, but also the local jurisdictions goals and our comprehensive plan and our zoning regulations. Doesn't mean that they're applying for permits, but they need to go through that process to demonstrate consistency. And so remembering back when we could not sign off on the Army Corps' application because it conflicted with our comp plan, this is what how that came to be understood and recognized because of federal consistency requirements. Without that, anybody could be out there doing work at the federal level. We would not be notified. We would not know. We would not have a say in that. So there's a lot of layers that go over this. It's not just Clatsop County's comprehensive Goal 16 in our zoning code, but there are coastal goals covered by the statewide planning system. There is a territorial sea plan. We have estuary planning, which we will talk about in just a moment, and hazard planning. And so all of those have to be consistent with each other. So it's a very complex and interwoven system. Okay, so estuary planning, to go specifically back to Commissioner Webb's question and comment. So our Goal 16 covers our 3 estuaries, the Columbia River, the Nicanicum River, and Ecola Creek. And when an estuary is established or identified and planned for, within the state of Oregon, there are 3 categories that are applied to an estuary. Your estuary is either considered natural, where the natural resources are of such quality and value that you want to primarily limit development of most sorts and keep that natural state. Then there are conservation estuaries, and they are the ones where you have natural resources, but they may not be in the quantity or the quality that you see in a natural estuary. So in some cases, such as the request here tonight, it may be appropriate to allow limited levels of development in a conservation designated estuary. And then finally, you have development estuaries. These are really the workhorses of the river system, and the Columbia River is no exception. We are designated as a deep draft development estuary. So that is the area where the most intense water-related uses and water-dependent uses are going to be found. And so on top of that, or maybe underneath it, depending on your point of view, once you've designated your estuary, so we've got deep draft Columbia River development estuary here, that estuary, not all of it is necessarily considered appropriate for development. So we break it down further into these management units. And the management units mimic the designations of the estuary. So you have natural, where you have the highest quality resources. You have conservation, areas where you have some resources, but development might be appropriate. And then development itself, where that's where you want to focus your development efforts. And just to prove my point, the slide says it's deep draft development estuary, so therefore it must be. Again, we have all the federal and state requirements and programs above us. And then we've got the Columbia River Estuary Plan. We have regional policies. In our comp plan, we have identified 22 sub-areas of the Columbia River Estuary that are covered by the goals and policies in Goal 16. We have policies related to mitigation and restoration. And then it's not just Clatsop County who is part of this. We, as the county, are the keeper of the maps, the estuary maps. So as we make changes to the estuary map and to Goal 16, the cities of Warrenton and Astoria are then going to follow us with their own process. And Astoria has just put out a notification that they'll be conducting their public hearing shortly. And then we've got the development code and maps. Okay. Before I move to the goal exception process, we just covered a lot of material about estuary planning, coastal consistency, the coastal management zone program. Did anybody have any questions about that?
Any questions?
Okay, thank you. All right, so then on to the goal exception process. And this is what we talked about on October 2nd during the work session, this process and how it works. But it is very similar to a variance request in that you have to, as the applicant, show that you meet certain thresholds and certain criteria in order for the request to be approved. And the process is outlined in OAR. There are 3 different types of exceptions that can be processed. One is where your land is already physically developed. So you have a piece of property, statewide planning goals come in, but your property has been developed in a way that is not consistent with that goal and the zoning. So you are considered physically developed. You can have land that is irrevocably committed. So maybe your land is vacant, but it is surrounded by all the other things that would make it possible for you to comply with a goal. And so you can get a goal exception that way. And then the goal exception process we're looking at this evening is called a reasons exception. And it's applicably named because the applicant has to give their reasons why they can't, the goal shouldn't apply. And there are 4 reasons that we're going to look at. One being why the goal is not applicable to that particular project, that situation, or that property. The applicant has to show that there is no other land available that would not require a goal exception, where they could do the same activity. And then also that the proposed site that they are looking at is not going to have any greater impacts than if they chose a different site that also required a goal exception. And then finally, like most applications, they have to show that what they're proposing it will be compatible with all the adjacent uses and every other standard. Okay, so OAR 660 Division 4, subsection 22A is where we start looking at the goal exception requirements. So the first exception, again, is why should this goal not apply to the activity being proposed, dredge material disposal? And so in their application, the applicant has talked about how they want to maintain the river sediment budget. And this is an important concept to understand, is that as sediment comes into the river and leaves the river, it plays a function in the establishment and upkeep of habitats. And in addition to causing shoaling and all the other things, it does have a beneficial use. And so there is a limited amount of riverine sediment. And it sounds kind of counterintuitive when there's a lot of dredging going on, shoaling, and there's always a need for dredging. But once that sediment leaves the river, it's gone. So if it goes into the ocean, if it's placed upland, you don't get that back. And so part of what is the Army Corps' charge is making sure that that riverine sediment budget is maintained over time. So that's one of the reasons also, again, because the thalweg mimics the natural movement of the river, to be able to then reduce dredging operations and reduce shoaling that might occur as part of this. So that is what has been submitted as the reasons for the goal exception. Staff had found in the staff report that those met the requirements. The second reason for a goal exception, or the second threshold that needs to be met, is that they have to look at alternatives. So is there any other place they could do this that doesn't need a goal exception? So they looked at using the flow lane, they looked at areas that are outside of the estuary, they looked at upland disposal, and then ocean disposal. And upland, or not upland, sorry, but upstream, outside of the estuary and within the flow lane are already at capacity. So there's not available space for more dredged material to be disposed there. Putting it and disposing it in the ocean would not meet the charge of maintaining riverine sediment and that riverine budget. And then upland disposal faces the same things because you are not getting that sediment back into the river. Upland disposal keeps it upland and keeps it out of the water. So that criterion had been met as well. The third criterion is related to the fact of whether or not the impacts by disposal in the expanded thalweg would be greater than if they went somewhere else that would also need a goal exception. And this one is based, the response and staff's finding of compliance are based upon primarily the biological opinions that have been issued by National Marine Fisheries Services. And so there is a lot of work and documentation that goes into those reviews. We know that it is a disposal of water, or not disposal of water, disposal of dredge is incumbent or reliant upon in-water disposal areas in this particular case. So an upland area is not going to work. There are a lot of monitoring measures that are in place. They have mandated in-water work periods, and there are a whole list of reasonable and prudent measures that are included to protect endangered species and the habitat that they utilize. And then the final criteria is somewhat similar in that they have to prove that they're compatible with adjacent uses. And again, because of the monitoring requirements, the reasonable and prudent alternatives, the mandated in-water work programs, it's anticipated that they will be compatible with adjacent uses. Disposal will occur at areas that are greater than 20 feet in depth, so there's not benthic activity, fish activity that is expected to be impacted. And the juveniles are hanging out at the shore areas where the water is shallower, and they are not going to be in those deeper depths. So again, these are the responses submitted by the applicant. Staff has found that they meet the requirement. I won't cover condition of approvals because you're not looking at that necessarily this evening, but tonight is the first public hearing. We did hold our public hearing on October 8th with the Planning Commission, who recommended approval. We did have one set of comments submitted after the meeting from the Columbia Riverkeeper and the Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition, which were included in your board packet. And if you do have questions about that, the applicant is here this evening and will be giving a presentation and is prepared to address those comments. And then also this evening and late this afternoon, there was an email sent to your board from the ports of Longview, Kalama, Woodland, and Vancouver, and the Port of Portland, supporting the proposed goal exception and related amendments. And I do have a copy here if you haven't seen that yet. Thank you for your patience. That completes my staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Oh, thank you, Gail. Thank you. Very, very comprehensive and well put presentation. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. And this is a question for County Council. I don't know if I'm in the disclosure period because we haven't announced the public hearing. I did have this presentation yesterday on the Columbia River area. I did also hear information about the Mechanicum estuary and how it functioned at that ribbon cutting. I assume that if I announce it to you all, I just tell you I got information about it. It didn't lobby me one way or the other about this particular hearing that we're having, but I just want you to know I invited all of my colleagues to come in case you were interested. I don't have written material and nobody recorded what I heard, but I heard information, just so everybody knows. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. County Council.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I see no issues with that, Commissioner Thompson. I think it's good that you came forward with it, but I don't think it creates any issues for us tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you, County Council. Do we have any questions of the staff report?
Commissioner Webb.
Commissioner Webb.
I guess I'm still feeling a little under-knowledged on this issue. I have a lot of questions. And I don't think, a couple of questions, for instance, are, to what extent along the Columbia River, we have a state line, and I would love, if anybody has any references for me about how the state line got drawn so far north and so close to the Washington, side of the river. I would love to hear that. And so I would really, I'd like to know more about that. I'd like to know more about what was the involvement of the state of Washington and the counties on the north side of the river. But I don't expect an answer to that right now. I just have so many questions, and I just don't think I'm prepared. I just don't think I know enough to proceed with a public hearing about this. I'm sorry. As always, our staff presentation was fabulous, but I just have so many different questions. Would it be possible for me to ask that we can postpone this for a couple of weeks? Would that?
I think the rest of us are able to proceed, and I think we've, the motion is going to be to continue the public hearing until November 13th regardless. But I'm comfortable going forward. I think most of the commission is. And do we have any other questions of staff before we open the public hearing?
Chair, if I may. Commissioner Webb, I'd be very happy to meet with you before the second hearing on November 13th and definitely try and answer all your questions. So
wonderful. Thank you. I would be very happy. I would be very happy. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Gail. At this time, I'll open the public hearing on ordinance 24-16, 24-17, and 24-18. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest to report? Not seeing any. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
We have two,
Okay.
Mr. Eric Liston and a Mr. Bill Ryan.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Chair, I don't mean to interrupt, but we do have a presentation by the applicant this evening as well.
Okay. So is the applicant joining us in person or virtually?
Virtually. This should be Bill Ryan, DSL.
Okay. So let's go ahead and have the applicant, which is Bill Ryan from Department of State Lands, Division of State Lands. Bill, can you hear us?
He's a panelist.
Oh, there you are.
There we go.
Hey, Bill, welcome.
Hello. Can you guys hear me okay?
Welcome. We can hear you fine.
Oh, great.
Did you want to make a presentation this evening on the application?
Yes, please. And I don't have a presentation with slides, but I did want to speak, and I wanted to read a response to a comment letter that was received from the Planning Commission into the record, if that'd be okay.
Yes.
Great. Well, good evening, Chair Quila and members of the board. For the record, my name is Bill Ryan. I'm Deputy Director at the Oregon Department of State Lands, overseeing the Aquatic Resource Management Division. And the department owns and manages the navigable waterways of Oregon, including the Columbia River, on behalf of the people of Oregon to protect the public trust values of navigation, fishing, commerce, and recreation. Maintenance of the Federal Navigation Channel by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is essential to enable the continuation of those trust values and to the state's economic well-being. As the owners of the bed and banks of the Columbia, DSL is applying for this goal amendment to ensure ongoing dredging of the Federal Navigation Channel and disposal of dredged materials is conducted in an environmentally responsible manner and in compliance with state and local regulations. DSL has worked in partnership with the Corps, DLCD, and county planning staff to prepare the goal amendment materials, and we appreciate the board's consideration today. I would like to enter into the record DSL's response to a comment letter submitted by Columbia Riverkeeper and the Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition, and I believe that that letter is in your packet.
It is.
Great.
Gail just introduced it, right?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Now I'm just managing multiple screens here, making sure I've got the right thing up. There we go. So, yeah, so this is responses to the comment letter dated October 8th by Columbia Riverkeeper and Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition. The comments state that the proposed exception is overbroad. As described in OAR 66-004-0051A, an exception is a comprehensive plan provision that is applicable to specific properties or situations and does not establish a planning or zoning policy of general applicability. This application meets that provision. The entirety of the thalweg is within DSL's property and is only for the disposal of dredged material, so the request is for a specific property and specific situation. The goal exception is to allow an activity that is not currently allowed in this area and is not a request to rezone these areas, meaning no other activities or uses allowed in aquatic development zones would be allowed in the goal exception area. In a given year, the Corps estimates that approximately 2,300 acres would be used for Corps in-water dredge material placement, or about 10% of the expanded flow lane disposal area. Additionally, any other non-federal applicant who wants to utilize this goal exception area if it gets approved would be required to apply for and obtain a local permit, addressing the applicable criteria and showing the location of where disposal would be occurring. A goal exception is an initial step and does not negate the need for additional local permits by other users if it were to be approved. The Corps, as a federal agency, is not required to get local permits, but it is required to show consistency with the underlying policies of those permits through the Federal Consistency Review process, which is led by the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development, and through other state permitting process where a land use compatibility statement is required. For example, a 401 water quality certification from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. Those processes remain in place and are not changing with this proposed exception. On the point that this proposal would allow new dredging projects, the proposed goal exception is a request only for the disposal of dredged material and would not allow new dredging projects if approved. Authorization of dredging is regulated separately from the disposal of dredged material in the county's estuarine management plan. Any future dredging projects by the Corps or other applicants would be separately reviewed and subject to the applicable county policies for that dredging action. We understand the county has added a condition of approval to make this point clearer. On the point that the county must retain authority for in-water placement and transfer sites, we understand that the county will retain that authority. The county's existing comprehensive plan already identifies the flow lane as an area where dredged material disposal is generally acceptable, provided the other criteria applicable to flow lane disposal are also followed. There are no transfer sites included in this goal exception application, only in-water flow lane disposal. Transfer sites are regulated separately by the county. The National Marine Fisheries Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife have reviewed the proposal for the entire geographic area included in the proposed goal exception area, and their concurrence with the Corps action provides evidence of consistency with federal, state, and local policies around fish and wildlife. The biological opinions issued by the National Marine Fisheries Service in 2012, 2021, and 2023 demonstrate their review and approval of the proposed action by the Corps over the entire thalweg area, which takes into account the potential impacts to various aquatic species. As mentioned earlier, in any given dredge season, the Corps would not use the entire thalweg for disposal. Approximately 10% of the area in a given season would be subject to dredged material disposal. Any other user of this area would need to seek an individual permit not only from Clatsop County, but also from the Army Corps and the Department of State Lands to specify where and when they would be placing dredged material and whether they could meet the criteria for flow lane disposal. The county will retain authority to review any other user of the goal exception area for dredged material disposal through local permitting processes. Approval of the goal exception would not change that authority. On the point that the county must set conditions on dredging approved under this exception, we'll reiterate that this goal exception is not for dredging. It is for the disposal of dredge material. These two activities are regulated separately under the Estuarine Management Plan and the county's policies. Also, as mentioned previously, any other non-federal applicant who wants to utilize this goal exception area, if it gets approved, would be required to get a local permit, addressing the applicable criteria and showing the location of where disposal would be occurring. A goal exception is an initial step to change activities allowable in a certain area. It does not negate the need for additional local permits by other users if it were to be approved. The Corps as a federal agency is not required to get local permits, but it is required to show consistency with the underlying policies of those permits through the federal consistency review process, which is led by DLCD, and through other state permitting processes where a land use compatibility statement is required. These processes remain in place and are not changing with this proposed exception. For other users, flow lane placement already requires a local permit, which includes submitting an impact assessment under the county's existing policies, and that requirement would not be changing if this goal exception were to be approved. On the point of making best management practices requirements, the Corps does follow its BMPs as part of its required consultation with federal fish and wildlife agencies. The county does have a condition requiring that these established BMPs be followed for in-water dredge material disposal within the goal exception area. And any other entity wishing to utilize this area for the disposal of dredge material would additionally need a local permit as well as other relevant state and federal permits. On the point of disposal in green and white sturgeon feeding grounds, as was stated in our application, the timing for use of disposal placement sites is the work windows in the most current 2012, 2021, and 2023 biological opinions from the National Marine Fisheries Service for the Corps' ongoing operation and maintenance activities, and those remain in place unless or until they're superseded by a later biological opinion. These ESA consultations include an effects evaluation and incidental take statement for green sturgeon. An evaluation of potential effects to white sturgeon similarly found no direct adverse effects, with some indication that some individuals are attracted to disposal areas in the short term. Additionally, disposal in areas deeper than 65 feet upstream of the Astoria-Megler Bridge is already allowed under the county's current definition of flow lane disposal. The change requested in this goal exception would be for areas deeper than 65 feet downstream of the Astoria-Megler Bridge. As mentioned before, any other entity wishing to utilize this area for the disposal of dredge material would need a local permit as well as other relevant state and federal permits, which would include abiding by in-water work windows and other fish and wildlife protection policies. On the point of avoiding high populations of Dungeness crab larvae, the Corps' proposed action is in water placement of dredged materials in depths 20 feet or deeper upstream of River Mile 3, which means it would exclude subarea P30.1 of the Columbia River estuary. That subarea extends from the mouth of the Columbia River to River Mile 3. The Corps has described that for areas deeper than 65 feet, disposal may be used if the placement does not cause the area to become permanently converted to depths shallower than 65 feet, and that the maximum deposition on the riverbed during placement of each hopper dredge or barge load would be such as to minimize benthic impacts. The Corps proposes to limit the depth of placement to 1/4 of an inch, which is 0.64 centimeters, and far less than the 10 centimeters mentioned in the comment. This limitation on placement in deep water would be included as a requirement in the county's policies and applied to all applicants of deep water flow lane disposal. On the point of a potentially changing goal exception area, DSL is requesting a text-based definition tied to a bathymetric contour which may shift over time. This approach is allowable and is similar in concept to a rolling easement, which is how the boundaries of the estuary and ocean shore are currently regulated, for example. The goal exception proposal would apply to areas that are all within DSL ownership. The Corps has stated that areas zoned by Clatsop County as aquatic natural or areas shallower than 20 feet would not be appropriate to accommodate this in-water dredge material disposal use because the effects would be greater in those areas than in the proposed Thalweg area. Areas shallower than 20 feet are also dredge equipment limited and would not be consistent with the consultations the Corps has conducted with the National Marine Fisheries Service. There have been multiple studies to support the conclusion that benthic organism densities are significantly lower in areas deeper than 20 feet, and that benthic primary production occurs in shallower subtidal and intertidal habitats. The proposal to allow flow lane disposal of dredge material is for areas that are deeper than 20 feet, where little to no benthic productivity is occurring, and where fish could avoid any dredge material placement activity. Most juvenile fish in the general vicinity are anticipated in shallow water habitat and closer to the vegetated shoreline than the thalweg. On the point about impacts to Chinook salmon migration, the Corps has already undergone consultations with the National Marine Fisheries Service and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the current operations and maintenance dredging of the federal navigation channels in the Columbia River, which did evaluate the impacts of the disposal of dredge material deeper than 20 feet and contiguous with the navigation channel. The Corps follows established best management practices to minimize adverse impacts to the aquatic and terrestrial environment. The most recent set of BMPs related to the disposal of dredge material was detailed in Section 1.3 of the National Marine Fisheries Service's 2012 Biological Opinion, which was submitted as Exhibit 3. That included an incidental take statement for salmon, steelhead, green sturgeon, and eulachon for inadvertent take occurring during proposed maintenance of the Columbia River federal navigation channels. These baseline activities have not changed, and implementation of these BMPs has been successful in minimizing potential adverse impacts to the aquatic environment. NIMFS also issued a biological opinion in 2021, which is in Exhibit 5 of the application, and in 2023, which is in Exhibit 6 of the application. The Corps will follow the BMPs outlined in those biological opinions unless or until they're superseded by a later biological opinion. On the point, I'm almost done here, thank you. On the point that DSA has failed to establish a demonstrated need as required by OAR 660-004-00221, DSL has consulted with the Department of Land Conservation and Development, and they explained that this point is commonly misinterpreted. The rule criterion states that an exception to a goal requirement can be based on requirements of other statewide planning goals, but does not have to be. The cases cited in the comment letter are from cases where applicants did try to use the requirements of one goal to justify an exception to another goal, but that is not what is being proposed here. DSL is requesting a reasons goal exception to statewide planning goal 16, estuarine resources, to allow for in-water disposal of dredged material in areas currently zoned as aquatic conservation in the Clatsop County Comprehensive Plan. The application is not using another statewide planning goal requirement to justify the exception. The reasons why the applicant believes the state policy embodied in Goal 16 for locations appropriate for dredge material disposal should not apply in this case are described throughout the goal exception application submitted by DSL. The bottom line is that thalweg placement of dredge sand is a balanced approach and is needed to sustain the Columbia River's sediment budget, its morphology, and enable eventual downstream progression of river sediment to the ocean. Terrestrial sediment supply to the lower Columbia River has been reduced due to floodplain development and hydroregulation by dams. The river sediment supply is now finite and is managed to sustain the ecological health of the estuary. Disposal of dredge material in the river thalweg is needed to sustain the river sediment budget. Therefore, the goal exception area has special features that necessitate its location. We believe that we have demonstrated evidence to support a goal exception for expanded flow lane disposal placement throughout our application and in these comments. Staff from the Army Corps are also here tonight to answer technical questions if needed. In closing, I'll add that based on the conversation at the Planning Commission, the public comments received, that there are some conditions we would like to propose that will add clarity for future actions, and we will work with county planning staff to prepare those for the hearing on November 13th. And with that, I'll close. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much, Bill Ryan, Department of State Lands. Appreciate the additional information and responses. I see Commissioner Thompson has a question. Commissioner Thompson.
I have to say that was one of the most beautiful pieces of testimony I've ever listened to. And I've been listening to testimony for a very long time. It wasn't short, but it was only as long as it absolutely needed to be to clearly articulate all of the issues and the compelling logic, the data to support the logic, and the concision of your statements is very impressive. I would add that everything you've said today was already iterated in a different kind of form in the information that I heard standing on the land yesterday. So I am further confirmed in the sense that I have that this is a reasonable way to proceed that will protect the environment and the species and the economy. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson, thank you very much for that. And I have to say, I did not write all that comment. I edited a little bit, but the credit for that, which was really well done, goes to Meg Reed and her partners at DLCD.
Yep, thank you very much, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Webb.
I guess I'm sorry. I'm still wanting a lot of questions answered. And this is such an enormous issue, I think, for us. In my many years of government service, I am always most suspicious when things get most complicated. And I just feel as if I have a lot of questions to answer. I certainly respect our staff's recommendations to us. But since we are opening up to, I mean, we're not just talking about this agreement, we are holding a public hearing about it. And as a member of Columbia Riverkeeper and a lot of other organizations allied with them, I just feel like I need to be a little bit smarter about this. I really do. And it's not that I'm rejecting the recommendation at all. I just feel that I need to be smarter about this whole issue. So I would love to ask if we could please postpone the hearing for this a couple of weeks at least in the future. Because I think there are a lot of organizations and individuals who commented on this who I would like to talk to.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Webb, thank you, Commissioner Webb, and I appreciate Gail's generous offer to have a discussion with you prior to our meeting on November 13th, but we'll bring this up again. Thank you, Bill Ryan from Department of State Lands. You said that someone from the Corps is there as well. Did they want to provide comment or just answer any Q&A?
They're here to answer questions if there are any technical questions.
Okay, do we have any technical questions for U.S. Army Corps? Okay, not seeing any. We'll go ahead and thank you for that additional information on behalf of the applicant. We'll move on now to any testimony. Do we have any?
Yes, Mr. Eric Riston.
Eric Riston, if you could state your name and address for the record and whatever organization you're representing, please. Eric?
You should be there.
Hello.
Hi, thank you. Eric Riston, 921 Southeast 27th Avenue, Portland, Oregon, 97214. I'm an attorney at Prague Law Center, and I'm here representing Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition. Appreciate the opportunity to testify on this issue because it's a really serious one, and I really encourage you all to take your time with this. It poses some pretty serious harm to the river's aquatic species and habitats, and thus to the communities and people who rely on it for their livelihood if it's not done right. Commissioner Webb, if this feels like it's moving fast to you, you can imagine how it might feel for any members of the public who are going to be affected by this crucial issue. That's the reason why I'm the only public testimony tonight for what's such a massive proposal. There just needs to be more opportunity for the public to get involved in this, including the fishing and the crabbing industry who need to be able to weigh in on this. That being said, there are two key legal issues I just want to go over really briefly. I'll try not to repeat too much of what was already stated in the response you just heard to the legal issues we raised in our comment. But I think those issues are still serious, and I want you all to hear a little bit about them. First, despite what you all heard, this proposal pretty clearly does not meet the definition of an exception under state law. I want to use that state legal definition again. but it explicitly excludes planning or zoning policies of general applicability. And what the Corps and DSL are asking for here is blatantly a policy of general applicability. The exception is massive. They're asking to significantly expand the areas where dredge material can be disposed of under Goal 16 along the entire section of the river for all users without identifying any specific areas where that disposal will occur or preserving any right of the county to object to specific in-water placement sites for their impacts on, for example, salmon or Dungeness crabs. What you just heard in regard to the federal consistency review process is true that there is still a review that happens as part of the federal consistency review process. But again, if the county says, hey, you can dispose of all this dredge material in conservation management unit areas, then the county doesn't have a right to come back and say, oh, turns out this conservation management unit area that was included in this exception that we couldn't consider because there wasn't any specific sites that were proposed does have significant Dungeness crab habitat that's going to be impacted by this dumping here.
Hey, Mr. Riston, your time is concluded. Can you wrap up real fast?
Yeah, thank you. I'll just point to our written comment that goes over these in a lot more detail and suggest the conditions outlined to rectify some of these legal issues. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Riston. Do we have any members of the public that are signed up to speak in person this evening?
No.
Anyone here that wants to testify on this? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on ordinance 24-16, 24-17, and 24-18. And we have a suggested motion here.
I move to conduct the first public hearing and continue the item to the November 13th, 2024 regular meeting.
Second that.
We'll move and seconded to continue the public hearing on this matter to our November 13th, 2024 meeting and conduct the second reading at that time. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay. The ayes have it. Thank you very much, Gail.
You're welcome.
And you'll be staying one more time.
Sure, thank you.
Ordinance 24-20. And thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Ryan and others. Next is ordinance 24-20, Law Duck Amendments Establishing Time, Place, Manner, Regulations for Psilocybin, page 489. This is the time set for a public hearing on ordinance 24-20, Law Duck Amendments Establishing Time, Place, Manner, Regulations for Psilocybin. Can we have the first reading by title only, County Council?
This is ordinance number 24-20 in the matter of an ordinance amending the Clatsop County Land and Water Development and Use Code, defining and establishing time, place, and manner regulations for the growing, manufacturing, and administration of psilocybin and related materials within unincorporated Clatsop County.
Thank you very much, County Council. And we'll move on to the staff report and Community Development Director, Gail Henriksen.
Thank you. So currently, the county has a 2-year moratorium that's about to expire on December 31st of this year. The moratorium prohibits the sale, manufacture, and distribution of psilocybin within the county. Psilocybin was approved in 2020 under Measure 109 by Oregon voters. So back in April of this year, we held a work session with your board, and you gave staff directions to start developing time, place, manner regulations. And just to kind of give you a comparison with where we are with the other jurisdictions in the county, Seaside and Warrenton are currently also under temporary moratoriums. They are choosing to go forward with a permanent referendum on the ballot in November. Astoria, Gearhart, and Cannon Beach, meanwhile, are doing time, place, manner regulations. So we also met with a lot of different groups about this, including the Public Safety Advisory Committee. And so we had a public hearing on October 8th with the Planning Commission. They had some changes that they wanted to make to the proposed ordinance. They wanted to remove manufacturing out of the resource zones, so our farm and forest zones. They didn't want any manufacturing occurring there. They did decide to add, tourist commercial and neighborhood commercial to the, zones where psilocybin service centers would be permitted. That's where you actually take the drug, where it's administered to you. And then, they had, yeah, sorry.
Could you start at the beginning of number 2, and they chose to add, where was that located?
Tourist commercial, I'm sorry, tourist commercial and neighborhood commercial.
Okay.
So as areas, staff had initially proposed 3 of our commercial areas, and we had some public comment at the board who were looking for an expansion of where those uses could occur. And so the Planning Commission did recommend that 2 additional sites or zones be added to the areas where psilocybin service centers could be permitted. And then the Planning Commission also wanted to verify that building size would be limited to a maximum of 2,500 square feet, and that it would just be limited to 1 building per parcel. Yes.
What's a parcel?
Parcel would be any area of land that's created through a partition or that has,
Okay,
has
so
like
it
a
could be
meets and
2
bark.
acres, 10 acres.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Webb, did you have a question?
I do. I'm sorry. For the first minutes of this meeting, I was having trouble logging on. And I thought that item 11 was relegated to a future meeting. Did I just not understand that well? Help, please.
No,
Sorry, I didn't understand.
I think you were thinking of item 8, which was
The ASA.
business item. That was the business item this evening, and that is going to be on another meeting.
Okay, so item 11 was not postponed.
Correct.
Oh, okay. I guess my other issue is that was not included in the packet that I was sent. And so I had no opportunity. I get my packets by mail. And it was not included. So I don't like the issue that I was not given. I haven't been in Astoria since Monday. And I did get my packet over the weekend. I think it was probably Saturday, but I have not seen this ordinance. So I have not had any opportunity to take a look at this ordinance. And suddenly it appears as public hearings, and then I thought it had been postponed. So I would like to very respectfully request that this be put off until a future time, because this county commissioner has not seen this ordinance.
Okay, does anyone else have that issue, or did everyone review this prior to the meeting? It is online, it is part of the agenda packet.
I use the electronic version, it was there.
Yeah. Anyone else? Commissioner Thompson?
Well, I haven't, I've been busy doing other things and I didn't get my packet, and reading it electronically is challenging for me. So my concern about this, about delaying this, and this again is a question for county council, do we have the ability to delay this, or will we get snarled up in legal deadlines if we wait to accommodate Commissioner Webb's request?
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Yes, I don't know the exact date, so we are starting to run into a hard deadline that if we don't get this moving forward, I guess we could always postpone it and pass it as an emergency in December. But we have 1 meeting, so we could find ourselves that if we don't get this passed in time, that then, we lose all control to regulate it. So it could cause problems if we don't move forward today.
And I guess my issue is that we have discussed this. This isn't coming at us blind here. We've had a work session, we've talked about this, and the Planning Commission has already had this in front of them. So
But I have not seen, excuse me, Chair, but I have not seen this. I cannot vote on a law that I haven't seen the content of. And I would like to respectfully ask, can we just go another 2 weeks? I mean, I don't think that would kill anybody. And that would certainly keep us under the.
Yeah, well, and respectfully, Commissioner Webb, you have missed a lot of meetings. And so I will say that, you know, we have been discussing this, and this isn't the first time that it's coming to us. It is online. I read it online. So it isn't that we haven't been able to get this information in front of us. And we aren't going to be making a decision other than continuing the public hearing until November 13th, 2024. So there will be an opportunity to discuss this once again.
Okay, as usual, as the fifth member of the commission, I'm used to this. I'm used to the lack of respect that I am always shown on this.
Point of order, Chair.
Commissioner Webb, I take issue with that. I think we're giving a lot of latitude here to discuss these issues. And just because one member does not want to go forward on this, I think we can't put the brakes on everyone else. I'm sorry.
I accept that. After 6 years, I accept that.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Webb. We'll go on to the, we finished the staff report?
Yeah,
Nope.
finish very quickly. So we're basically going to add definitions for these terms to section 1.0500 of our law doc. We are putting in operational and location restrictions, including hours of operation, 1,000-foot setback from the property lines, from private, public, and parochial schools. For farm use and manufacture, all activities would have to occur inside an enclosed building. And then obviously there are licensing requirements at the state level that would need to be maintained. Then to look at the specific zones, so the growing and harvesting of psilocybin could occur in our resource zones. That is considered, psilocybin is considered a farm crop, so there's no way that we can regulate that. The manufacture and processing, where you are actually taking the product and changing its physical characteristics, would it be allowed in our industrial zones? So heavy industrial, light industrial, rural community industrial, and our mixed commercial light industrial zone. And then the service centers where the psilocybin is actually administered to clients would be allowed as the type 2 use, conditional use, in our commercial zones. Yes, Commissioner Banks.
I'm just curious. I am visual with maps, and I was just curious if we could somehow do a map overlay, color coding these different uses and zones before the next hearing. That way, community members will have the ability to visualize where all of this could actually potentially happen, especially since there's not, you know, talking about multiple different zones, and our zoning codes are pretty robust. And so a photo overlay would be really nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Sorry. And that's really my presentation. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions of our Community Development Director at this time? Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, sir. Well, I've been approached by community members who have concerns about making this therapeutic use affordable and would hope to have it allowed where a home occupancy permit or, you know, basically a residential business setting, because that would increase the availability to low income users who have need for therapeutic healing that they feel would be offered by this substance. I wonder if allowing for that kind of accommodation would delay our legal process, because I'm very aware that we are under a time crunch and I want us to maintain control. So how do we assure that we maintain our control? Can we accommodate any changes at this point? Or are we simply going forward? I need to understand, please.
So, Commissioner Thompson, if I'm understanding your question, I think that you have expressed the fact that you have heard concerns about how we maintain affordability for people who may not otherwise have access to psilocybin. Is that correct? So as the county, we are not able to regulate pricing. We can only regulate time, place, and manner. So there are several different layers of regulation that are set up under Oregon Health Authority that play into the licensing, the training, and many other, how you handle product, how you package product, and things like that. But in terms of pricing or taxation, the county doesn't necessarily have a role in that. All that we can do is provide opportunities for people to be able to frequent doesn't, it's not the right word, but to be able to have a consultation and a session at an administrative center.
Well, yeah, and I'm not looking for us to micromanage to that extent. What I'm saying is, if we allowed, and I wasn't clear enough in my question, I apologize. If we allowed the operation of a service center as a home occupancy permit, that would increase the affordability. So that's where we have, in my mind, an option. I don't know if it would be timely to consider that option.
So if we were to amend the proposed revisions, that would be a substantive change. And we would need to go back, re-advertise, and then reconduct the first hearing again, because that would be a very substantial change.
I'm not in favor of doing that.
And I'm not either. I just asked the questions, so I'm not trying to push for it. I'm responding to constituent concerns and asking the question. So I'm not advocating for it. I'm simply inquiring. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Commissioner Toyoka.
And anything I've read, there's nothing that addresses like, water restrictions, water regulations, because I know there's, I'm not a expert on this, and I've just been reading there's different ways of processing, hot water, cold water, this, that, and then what about water regulations for the discharge? Like we have our beer industry or, fishing is highly regulated. What are regulations would be in place for this?
Okay, so I apologize because Jay Blake, our planning manager, who has been the lead on this, he is out this evening. He's not feeling well, but he had worked with, I can't remember who he worked with, but he did have a whole discussion with someone at the state level regarding water usage. So the water usage itself is minimal. Discharge that occurs is going to be regulated either through the on-site system that someone is utilizing or the sewer system. Before anybody can set up the use at the local level, they would have to obtain sign-offs from the water district or the water provider, the on-site septic system or the sewer provider, and also from the fire marshal. The purpose of having those sign-offs is so that the districts can verify that they have adequate capacity to serve the use. So that would be regulated at the time they come in and apply for a permit through the agencies themselves that are providing the services.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Commissioner Banks?
I'm just curious about the septic, since a majority of our unincorporated area is on septic systems. Do we permit the size of septic needed for this situation and setbacks from waterways, riparian zones, active fish streams? Like, is that something that is going to be in our control, or is that something that is outside of our control?
So County Public Health has an environmental health division, and they regulate and oversee the on-site septic system program. And I know that there are separation requirements between a septic and a stream and a septic and a well. Usually septic capacity is based on the number of bedrooms. So since this use is not likely to occur in a bedroom or an extra bedroom being added on, that would be something that environmental health then would have to work with the applicant on an individual basis to determine what their water usage is and what would be the expected disposal rate, the flow rate, and then be able to verify whether or not the system had enough capacity.
Okay. Okay, it's an uncharted territory, and so, considering we're all on septic systems, and septic systems have been around for a long time, and the setbacks and so on and so forth have been established for a long time for a housing situation, not a manufacturing situation. So, it was just a little, that's interesting. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just as a comparison, when the legalization of cannabis occurred, and it went from just medicinal to recreational, we did a whole ordinance back in 2018 that also did these same types of things, where you could grow, process, manufacture, research, sell, also in an unincorporated county. And to date, despite there being applications, especially for the growing of cannabis, we have not had any issues with the water systems. We've not heard complaints. We've not had feedback from water districts. We've not had feedback from environmental health. So I would look at that, and actually the use of water for psilocybin is less than that for cannabis, so.
Well, cannabis uses a lot.
Yes.
But,
a low bar.
Yes, thank you. I'm curious about the potential chemicals possibly used in I don't understand. I think the biggest concern I have with this whole process is that really we don't actually understand the manufacturing and process of such products. And I'm glad that Jay Blake has been asking the questions that I asked of him in his last presentation. And I just hope that he's back when we go through this, the next round. So
Me too.
He can,
You'll be sick of me by the end of that night.
so that he can answer those questions. But yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Bangs. Commissioner Toyoka.
Thank you. I always know we've been a big topic of discussion at our PSCC meetings. We have our chair, Kelly Broughton, here as well. So we have another resource of information with us on board. And I see we have Joe Quackenbush, we have on the board as well. So there's a wealth of information, but doing research, just to answer, like Commissioner Thompson had a question about, affordability. And there was a survey, they have pricing, structures for all these sites, and especially in metro areas. And the room rates are not a factor as much. In Portland Metro, the lowest room rate is $300, and in the more boutique is $995 or $1,000 to rent. The actual drug is very inexpensive, $200 to $250, and that's the tax that the state gets 15% on that drug itself. But the facilitator cost is the real expense there, $1,000 to $2,600. So the most affordable in the Portland Metro was $1,250. The most expensive was like $3,800, for that experience. So it's, I think somebody summarized it very well. This is not about therapy. It's about monetization of a drug. And so we have to kind of look at it with that lens as we go forward on these. And there's a lot of other legal traps that could hit us. So I think we should keep consulting as we move forward in the process. Talk to PSCC. We have law enforcement there. We've got, judges, DAs that can handle us on the legal side to keep us on the straight path too.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. Commissioner Thompson.
I appreciate Commissioner Toyoka's response to my concerns. I don't know that I agree with 100% with what he said, but I appreciate that he's answering my questions. Thank you.
Any additional questions at this time? If not, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 24-20. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest to report? Not seeing any. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there were not.
Okay. And then Andy Still, I know you're here to provide public testimony. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Yes, I'm Andy Still. I live at 33452 Beerman Creek Lane in Seaside, 97138. Having said that, testimony, I would really like to address everyone's concerns. I've been in this for a couple of years now, learning, getting licensed as a facilitator, And I have the information that you're talking about, but nobody's talking to me, so I can't help you with that information unless we have the conversation. I will read this prepared statement, and then I would love to answer any questions. Psilocybin is medicine. I think we all agree on that now. And I hope that you had a chance to read my written comments that were sent out to you earlier. Psilocybin is consistently ranked as one of the safest drugs, whether legal or illegal, and is incredibly effective at treating many mental health issues when utilized as Oregon state law allows. This includes safer than tobacco, safer than alcohol, safer than marijuana. However, it can't be accessed by many of Clatsop County residents because it is too expensive. And I would like to take issue with the facilitator versus drug versus service center. We can talk about that offline because those numbers are not necessarily accurate. And a facilitator must put in 12 to 15 hours per client just to do the legal requirements. And most of the time, it's more like 20 hours per client. The recommended ordinance presented to you today will widen the affordability hurdle by forcing psilocybin service centers and manufacturers to operate in the most expensive ways and places possible. Service centers are closest in nature and practice to that of a wellness coach, a business coach, or a mental health counselor. There's negligible traffic and absolutely no encroachment to anyone outside of the secured facility. Without signage, you wouldn't even know it was there. It makes perfect sense to allow this activity as a home occupation. And I have a lot more comments. It's not available outside of public as a marijuana dispensary is. And growing and manufacturing are not two separate activities. Those are the same things that you would use in your own kitchen at home. So they are now being required to be in two different zoning areas, which makes it completely infeasible at $10,000 per license per year. And the operating costs. I will skip the rest of my comments and wrap up, but I would love to share this with anyone who would listen. Please don't rubber stamp this ordinance. Currently, it will make it more expensive for people to access this medicine, and we need it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy.
And I'm here if you want to ask questions.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Do we have anyone else that is signed up to speak?
No, we're not.
All right, we'll go ahead and, do we have any responses? Nope. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on ordinance 24-20. Do we have any further comments, or we are ready for a motion?
I move to conduct the first public hearing for ordinance 2420 and continue the item to the November 13th, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to continue the public hearing on this matter to our November 13th, 2024 meeting and conduct the second reading at that time. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Did we lose?
Opposed? Okay. I don't hear a response from Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Webb? Is she still with us?
I'm a no. I'm a no. Commissioner Webb is a no.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Webb. All right. Gail, you did yeoman's work this evening. Great job.
For your time.
Thank you, Gail.
We don't have any other items on our agenda, so we'll go ahead and, do we have anything for the good of the order? Does anybody have anything else you want to bring? Okay. We'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you very much for being here. Have a good rest of your Wednesday, a good rest of your week.